Hey, what's up everyone? Gonna do the breakdown of Lake Lewisville. Try to give you all the juice. I know that it didn't seem like there was much of juice on Lewisville. There was. It's just, man, this is how these tournaments go. I know a little bit about where those guys caught them. I know a little bit about how I caught them, how I was catching them in practice, how Hallman was, Andrew, Scott, some of the guys that were leading. I'm not going to get in too much into theirs, but we are going to break down a little bit about what happened with my practice, why I chose to do what I did, and then how I adjusted a little bit because everything changed as usual. So let's dive on in. Guys, if you're new to the channel and you're new to this is what I do is I break down these lakes after fishing and open on them. So I'll have my practice video, I'll have the tournament footage, and then I'll go back and kind of show y'all over a 4 or 5 day period kind of how those fish changed, how pressure changed to them, how the weather changed. And when I mean pressure from us open guys that are, you know, when you got 150 to 200 boats out there on the water for 5 days, it kind of shows what happens to some of those fish, how some of them change altogether, and then we get thrown in a weather system that was nothing like we had in practice, so we have to adjust. So that's kind of what I do with these videos. If you're new to this, stick around. Like I said, if some of it's confusing, you might have to go watch some of my practice videos and tournament videos, and I try to put everything in those videos. There's a reason. I just don't show a random fish catch or stuff. I try to show y'all, like, if I caught them off docks, or if I caught them deep or shallow, or sometimes I'm like, well, he didn't even catch any fish doing this. Well, yeah, but I tried it, right? So I mean, I tried certain things and I just didn't get bit doing it. Sometimes when I did that, even though I never caught a fish doing it, I still caught him in the tournament doing it. So it's kind of crazy to think, you know, you can go 2 or 3 days without catching a fish and then still do it in a tournament, catch them. Sometimes to have that confidence is what you guys need. So like I said, please subscribe, drop a comment, let me know if y'all have any questions about Lewisville after this video. All right, when I got down there, I have some pre-knowledge of Lewisville. It probably hurt me. It probably hurt me a lot. I don't have very much. I know I'm down here in Texas, but we really don't fish it. Like, I never go up there. I've been up there twice for an open in like February or March. And then me and my team partner, Russell, Cecil, fished at TXTT like 6-7 years ago in June. We came in second, we caught them. And of those 3 events, all 3 of those events were won down south, okay? And of most of the events that I've ever heard on that lake, they're almost all won down south. So I spent 100% of my time down south. I never went underneath either of the bridges, and I didn't even want to spend too much time in Old Dallas. So, or 121. I mean, I basically stayed on that south end, and it's just because I know that's where most of the fish live. It can handle pressure better than most other places. So that's what I did. So I went down there with a preconceived notion to do that. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. This probably will be a lot different than my Lake one I'm gonna do. And I kind of did the exact same thing and it worked out. So, you know, it's a hard one to figure out which one you're supposed to do. So I went down there knowing that I didn't think I was gonna catch them on topwater, which I was right. I was not expecting to see all the bushes and trees in the water. It didn't seem like there was enough water on them to really do that good where I was at. Although, and I still don't think there is, but I do think you can catch some fish doing it. I did. It just didn't seem like the right pattern. So it seemed like after a day, I went to Carolina rigging and doing some stuff, and the first point I pulled up to that looked right, I got some bites. And you'll see in my practice video, I got some bites, and then I catch a big one. It was like a 4-pounder. And I get some more bites past that, and I started getting a couple bites here and there. I happened to be on the phone with Hallman later on in the day, and he was like, he had thrown at this spot. We were just having to be talking. He's like, man, I'm gonna pick up this Ned rig. In his first cast, he throws out there with a Ned rig in like 14 foot of water. He catches a 7-pounder. And I'm like, well, okay, well, there's a 7 out deep. I've caught a 4 out deep, shook off some other fish. you know, that's kind of what we thought would play out. I picked up a Ned rig right after that and just go to getting bites after bite after bite. And I know a lot of them are small, but it didn't matter how many small ones are. You know, I'll go through 20 small ones to catch one big one. That doesn't bother me at all. So I started doing that, and I caught some keepers doing it. And that kind of formulated day one of what I was gonna go do. And so I just started running that pattern, and I was marking stuff offshore. Place got a bunch of foundations, a bunch of rock. It's got the coolest stuff you can side image on that lake. It's not great for side imaging fish, but it is good for side imaging structure stuff, like things in the water. There's all kinds of just junk, man. I mean, there's just all kinds of stuff you can find. It's a pretty cool lake to just do that. A lot of brush piles. I didn't find many brush piles, but I found a lot of the other stuff. So every single time I stopped on a spot, I could at least get a bite on a Carolina rig or Ned rig. So, I mean, I thought I had a pretty good game plan. I started going up to marinas and some docks and some boat ramps, and I started getting bit on certain ones. And so now I've got some deep stuff, I've got some boat ramps, I've got some marina stalls and docks. I don't really know how big any of them are. I think a couple of them were big. I had a couple on that practice video that I think were big. A lot of them I think were small, but a couple of them were big. And I didn't expect to go out there and set the world on fire and catching 10 keepers a day. I mean, we were all hoping for 4 or 5 a day. If you notice right off the bat, I went in there and practiced, and there was these sticks in the water, okay? And they were old, looked maybe like young willow trees. I'm not really sure. And they were out there in 3 foot outside of the bushes, and they were in like the perfect water depth to catch them. And I fished a bunch of them. I fished them all through practice, and I think I had one non-keeper bite on it on a swim jig. And what was crazy about that is that there was one set of trees and bushes that I threw a swim jig in and had like 4 or 5 bites. They were all non-keepers, but it was always in the back of my mind thinking, man, I could probably catch some fish out of these bushes and trees, and I would try it. But we had days like this, right? We had dead slick, dead calm days, and on those days, that's when the deep bite was pretty good. So as we're going on, we knew it was going to change. We knew there was going to be wind. We knew that there was going to be clouds. And me and Hallman had even talked about going, they're going to bite a spinnerbait, but like where? Like where? And what we mean by where is, here's the problem with going out to a place where you're not getting very many bites. And even if things change and they start biting a spinnerbait, you know you're not going to get very many bites, okay? So you look at the lake, and you see some places are steep, some places are flat, some have bushes, some don't, some have rock, some have dirt. Do you want to stay in the main lake? Do you want to go back in the creeks? Do you want to go back in a giant creek area and fish shallower water and flatter stuff? Do you want to fish those willow tree stalks, is what I call them? Like, what do you want to do? Are they going to be in 2 foot or 4 foot? Because on the flatter stuff, that's a big area to cover, and you know you're not going to get many bites. So you're trying to figure out, how do I do all this come tournament day, knowing that the morning time is probably going to be the best time to do it, and there's a good chance as the day goes on, it's going to be harder and harder to get bites. And 3 to 4 fish a day gets you paid. 5 probably gets you in the cut. And so that sounds easy, right, guys? But the problem is like, when you have to try to figure something out tournament day, because you think that that's going to be the way to catch them, you gotta be strong-willed. You gotta go up there with some confidence and be willing to try a whole bunch of different things. Now, mind you, that sounds great if you had nothing to go off of. The problem is I had gotten bit, right, doing other things. So even though in my head I think there's a way to catch them, I still got bit in practice, like fairly good at times, enough to feel like I've got to go check that stuff. So I've got to check that, in the back of my mind, I think I can go throw a spinnerbait around or a chatterbait, and it's like, you got to make a decision. Well, luckily, the first point I pulled up to, it was blowing so hard, it was kind of hard for me to fish it. So I did go up there and started throwing a spinnerbait, and I caught a 4-pounder right off the bat. It was the first bite I had on a spinnerbait since I'd been there. So I ran it, guys, for 2 to 3 hours. I did. I mean, I ran it hard and never had another bite. And I ran it on the stuff that looked like where I caught that 4-pounder. Okay, it was main lake. It was they were in little cuts, and there were some of those stalks around. I didn't think you needed the stalks though. I think they were just in the cuts, but there wasn't that many cuts. You had to do it on the one side of the lake that I think was getting the wind blown on it. So I mean, it was still not a giant area, and then it's just one of those deals where it's like you know there's more stuff to it, but then do you go try to kind of go back to your old pattern of how you've been catching them for 3 or 4 days? So as that's going on, bait guys, I caught some more fish deep on a rig and a Ned rig, and I mean, I bet you I caught 10 or 12 more fish, 13, and they were all small. Even on that Carolina rig where I was catching them out there pretty deep, and I wouldn't think that those would be small ones. I just could not get a keeper bite. So that was it on day 1. Day 2, I'd gone home and I'm like, I'm not doing that again, right? I'm not gonna go out there and mess around. So I'm going spinnerbait from the get-go. And I did. I went in that same pocket, I caught one and caught another one. And I looked around and I tried some stuff, and I was just jumping around like crazy. And I went back below the I-35 bridge, and we were loading back there on one spot. So I had a little area where I'd caught some kind of on that little semi-offshore stuff, but I hadn't gone anywhere further to the back. I mean, there's a couple more miles of it. And I just drove back there, and I just drove down until I saw one of them pockets and just started fishing it. It was kind of later in the day though. It was like 10. It wasn't just early. And luckily the first pocket I went into, I got a bite. I caught a keeper. And then as I'm coming out, I caught one that almost measured. Went into the next little section. My co-angler catches a keeper. I catch 2 more shorts. And I catch another one. He catches another keeper. And it started making sense to me that I don't think they were big ones, guys, but it was weighted to generate bites. And who knows if I'd have been there early, right? And so what happens is I personally think you can usually go get bit off the stuff that looks good in the first couple of days of these tournaments. As the pressure goes, as guys pull up on spots that look really good or banks that look really good, they either catch them all or they push them all off there. And what happens was I started going to places that I'm like, I don't see a lot of rock on the bank. I don't see a lot of anything. I'm just going down the bank, and I kind of got bit on those places. They didn't look that good. They looked good, just good enough to hold maybe a fish in the area, but I just don't think they were hit that hard. And I probably should have done that more. And I started finding little sections where I would get bit, and I think that was key. I talked to a guy later that was throwing a spinnerbait, and he's like, hey man, you might go in 7 pockets and catch 2 out of 1 and none out of the other ones. I've seen certain lakes do that where there's no way you can pattern the lake because 4 pockets in a row look the same and only one of them has fish. A lot of that is shad based. If they're feeding on shad heavy, which I think they were, because we were seeing a lot of shad, and some of these pockets had a lot of shad in them, certain ones, not all of them, but just, and it's so hard to tell. You kind of have to just be in there when you see them. That has something to do with it, but it's very hard to pattern those, and practice does help if you're going to run that pattern. But like I said, I think it would have been hard to run that pattern in practice because the days weren't right. They were like this, and I just don't think you would have got bit. So that's the dilemma. I know guys caught them up north. I'm gonna switch gears. I know guys caught them up north. If you notice, I don't think there was one single local up there. That should tell you something. The locals didn't even think it was gonna happen up there. I don't think any local thought that that's where it would go down. It's a small area. They usually don't catch them that good to begin with, And then you add all these people in a small area, and you saw it on Bass Live. I mean, guys were fishing right next to each other, bad, and it worked for some of those guys. I don't know if it'd work again, but it did work this tournament, and even those locals were like shocked that it happened. So that was one of the deals. I know that that's just a tough call. That's a tough call that we all tried to make. I know Brandon Dillard called him the way he was doing. I'm not going to give his stuff away, but even his stuff dried up. I mean, it's just those lakes, and guys, Lewisville is not very good. It's horrible. It's an okay lake on a Wednesday with no one out there. I get it, but for a tournament lake with 180 guys, it's not the lake you ever want to have a tournament on. Let's be honest, we all hated it. We didn't want to go there to begin with, and I don't think they should have tournaments on that lake of that caliber. It's just, there's too many boats in a small area. And I know some guys are gonna disagree with this, and like, hey, we like hard events. I don't think you do, because the coverage doesn't show it. The views don't show it. Like, no one wants to go watch some guy catch 3 fish in 8 hours. That's not really good coverage. It's not really good for fishing. It's not really good for the co-anglers that took off work to come down here and go fish a lake and catch 1 fish in 2 days. I don't think that that's good. I think they need to do a better job of that, of picking lakes that are better and are better suited for bigger tournaments. You got to realize something. It's different if that's all we had to choose from. We're in Texas. It's probably like the 40th best lake in Texas. There are other lakes to go to, very, very close, that would have shown out. That's my little opinion on that. Let's kind of go over the map and see what all the map has to show and what I tried to focus on. So here's the map of Lewisville. I basically tried to stay in this general area right here. So I didn't go up these creeks, or even way up here where these guys were catching them. This is not the map I had, but what I was focusing on were just these points right here, okay? There's a bunch of them all up and down there. And I would just kind of graph around, even over here, and I would just graph around there until I saw something, anything that might hold a fish. And there's some foundations around and little rocks around, and you just kind of went around graphing all these areas, all these points here, all these little points here. Not one of them, I think, you know, when we're not there a lot, we don't really know, right? So I couldn't tell you, this might be the best point on the lake, and I get 1 bite there. And this might be where guys win tournaments right here, right? But it's very hard in practice to know with all these points, if you're getting bit off some of them, which ones are actually the best. See, that's the problem we come up with, guys, is we might find the fish, and we might find the winning fish, but we might not realize when it's so tough like that, which spot to, like, we were all debating on which spot we should start on. Because it's not that we had a bunch of bites, it's just, we know we can't just sit there and set the hook on a bunch of them and really know, we don't have history. So there's marinas in here, there's marinas over here, there's docks over here, there's random docks everywhere. So these pockets where I thought spinnerbaiting might be pretty good were just these little bitty pockets, just like this, little bitty indentions. They weren't much. Sometimes they had stuff in them. Sometimes they had bushes in them. You just had to have confidence and go with it. Now the wind was all blowing this direction, okay, from the dam. So all this was calm, which wasn't great for a spinnerbait. All this had looked good. Now sometimes you get over here and there was 5-footers. I mean, you couldn't fish that. This is where I wish I had spent some time. This is where I went back into and started fishing. I don't know much about it. I just went to not all the way to the back, because I didn't want to go to all the way to the back, but I just kind of started like right here, okay? And I just drove back here for whatever reason, just started throwing a spinnerbait and caught a keeper, had some more bites here, My co-angler caught a keeper or two in here. I caught some fish. And I just kind of messed around some of these places. And I just like the smaller pockets. One, because it was easy for me to manage since I hadn't been back there. I mean, it would take me, you know, an hour and a half to fish that cut right there. But it only takes me about 5 to 10 minutes to hit this cut. So it allows me to like hit little small cuts, you know, and try to figure out a pattern in a small amount of time. So I'd hit little pockets like this, little sections like this, and I think I could have caught some fish doing that, more than what I did, and just stayed in this section. I don't know if I could have won it. I'm not sure, but that's where we're at. Baits I was throwing, mainly it was a Ned rig, a Strike King Ned rig, a Carolina rig, okay? And I had a Carolina rig with a Super Fry on there, Strike King Super Fry. That's how I was getting all my bites out deep. Every single one of them came on those two baits. The only other baits I threw that I got bit on was a swim jig and a spinnerbait. Now, the swim jig is just like the normal Hack Attack Strike King swim jig. The trailer on it, I think you could go either way. I don't really think that mattered. I think it was just trying to put one in front of a fish that was up there. Two of the fish I caught on a spinnerbait was on a 1/2 ounce spinnerbait. I'll show you pictures of that. And then I tied on a 3/4 ounce because, like I said, I didn't know if maybe I'd catch some in that 3 to 4 foot range and have to slow roll it. Not slow roll it, but I wanted a bait that I could work faster down deep a little bit. I think it was probably the hardest tournament that we had for sure. I think overall it looked the worst, weight-wise. So anyways, that's it, guys. Let me know what you think. Guys, the next event, Lake. Watch the practice video, watch the tournament footage, watch the recap. I personally think that will be the best one of the year, hands down. I mean, I got a ton of bites, caught a ton of fish, can show you all on the map about how it all changed. So, hope you guys like it, man.